Wow, 8:01. Okay. I'm Diane. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Diane.
And my sobriety date is May 5th of 1988. So been sober a long time, which just makes me very old. I was 39 when I got sober, and so I turned 75. You don't have to add. Yeah, I'm 75 this year. So pretty amazing. I never, ever, ever expected to live this long, for sure. And wow, what an incredible journey. And I'm assuming you guys are from a treatment center. I know I look like the Relief Society president, but trust me, I'm not. As soon as I start talking, you'll go, oh yeah. So, I just came down from the God camp out up in the Uintas, and I overdo everything. I went up for 8 days. It's 3 days long, but I go up for 8 days. And I have a motor home, and I go up there in the peace and the quiet and the God and the nature. And I feel like I'm kind of an empty vessel. I mean, every time I would sit, before the fire and the water, it would just be like, breathe in God and breathe out Diane, So I kind of feel like I'm like this empty vessel. And I've done a lot of talks, and I'm usually like, okay, now I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this, I'm going to make sure I tell him this, I'm going to make sure I say that. And today it's like, I'm just going to wait for God to show up, and hope that I give the new people some hope, that you too can have a life beyond your wildest imagination. God, if I could just give you some of the joy and the happiness and the peace that I have, not the material possessions. I used to think as soon as I get this, then I'll be happy. And as soon as I get that, and as soon as I get her husband, and as soon as I get their car and their house, Diane's going to be happy, And I always say I could go live in I don't want to. Never mind, I didn't say that. I could live in a cardboard box, and the peace and the joy and the love I have for other people is just beyond the wildest dreams, My drinking career started, I'm from Tonopah, Nevada. If you've ever heard of Tonopah, it's a little tiny town. My backyard was a mountain, and so I think that's where I learned to love the mountains and the lizards and the chipmunks and the snakes. I love all that stuff. And I made the paper when I was 5 years old. I still have the article. My mom cut out the paper, and it said, Little Diane Pease, that was my maiden name, goes into local tavern, pounds on the bar, and asks for a Pabst Blue Ribbon, And so in Tonopah, there's like 1,800 people. That was newsworthy, Diane wanted a beer. And, I asked my mom, she goes, your brothers dared you to do it, And so, of course I did. You dare me anything. I'm up for it, And so we moved here when I was 6. And so, but, Nevada, drinking is just part of it. People say they remember their first drink. I haven't a clue. It was just part of life. You drank beer, you drank. Of course, when I became a teenager, it was like, full on. And I never used the word, I've had enough. I'd never had enough. I was a blackout drinker probably from the time I was 16, 17. I would go out to party, and then all of a sudden I'd be home. And I'd be like, what did I do? Where did I go? What did I do? And I thought that everybody blacked out. And I was sponsoring a girl one time, and she'd been in treatment. And she said that she learned in treatment that only potential alcoholics or alcoholics black out. Other people pass out. They drink, they get relaxed, they get and then they pass out. But I blacked out. Moving into my marriage, we'd go party, we had a motorcycle that we'd get on and take off, and, anyway, I'll back up a little bit. So I got married when I was still in high school, and I married this man that, he wasn't a man, we were both in high school, and very violent, very alcoholic, very crazy. And when I was doing the 5th step and doing my work, one of the first times we were dating, we were driving around Liberty Park, and I watched this guy I just watched this guy running around the park, and he slammed on the brakes, slams on the, sits there and pushes me out of the car, said, "You want him? Go get him." And I was like 16 years old. Most 16-year-olds would go home and tell mommy, guess what this asshole did? But no, not me. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. Oh, God. When I looked back at that woman, I do a lot of that woman when I got sober. So started drinking off right from the beginning, got a black eye on my wedding day, and of course, I told everybody we were wrestling in the grass and his elbow fell in my eye and I had this big old shiner, and it was off to the races. I would smack him, there was violence, it was crazy, and it was drinking. I had 4 kids by the time I was 25. And these, if you think that children are going to help you stay sober, did not stop me a bit. I'd get pregnant. I would stop when I was pregnant. The second I quit nursing, back to the booze, back to the coke, back to the amphetamines. I loved amphetamines. Oh, mommy's little helpers. And so I don't know how anybody raises kids without mommy's little helpers, And we would buy mayonnaise jars full of amphetamine, cross tops. You kids probably don't know what cross tops are, but I'd just reach in, take a handful, and 25 was the average, and then I'd be, boo! And didn't sleep for days. I had the cleanest house, and I scrubbed the floors, I washed the walls, I vacuumed. My kids used to say, "You and your damn vacuum!" It was always going. And I thought, having kids, that is not who I grew up to be. It was to be this mother that left her children, And we had a motorcycle we'd get on and take off. And my daughter was, I think, probably 8, 9, 10 when I started leaving them. And she said, "Mom, I know you're not coming home because you take your toothbrush." And I'm like, "Little bitch, watch this." I bought another toothbrush, and we'd get on the motorcycle, I'd have some clothes, a new toothbrush, leave the old one home, and then I wouldn't show up for 2 or 3 days. And I could not see a thing wrong with it. I knew she was going to pick up the pieces and take care of them. And when she was a teenager and I got sober, she said, "Mom, I don't want any kids. I already raised yours." And those were the kind of amends I had to make with my kids, that they never knew when Mom was going to be there. They never knew when Dad was going to come home. I had to go out and watch this guy. You're not woman enough to take my man. I had to keep an eye on him. So, I always went to the bars and chased with him. And back in the old days, we didn't have cell phones. So I'd call the kids, say, "I'll be calling you, and I'll check in on you." So I'd call like 10 or 11 o'clock. And my oldest daughter said, "You know what it's like, when you got sober?" She said, "You know what it's like to sit at the window and wait for your mom to come home?" And she doesn't. And my second daughter said, "You know what it's like to go hide from your mom and she doesn't come look for you?" And those heartbreaks were, whew, they were amends that have taken a lifetime. My kids are in, 3 of them are in their 50s and one's still 48. So it's been a lifetime of making those amends and trying to be the mom and the grandma, that I wanted to be. Did not plan on being that kind of mom. So rode the motorcycle across country, and I would sit in the back and smoke pot and drink, and I kept falling off all the time. And so I had this brilliant idea. I took bungee cords and I strapped myself on, clear up around here, and I'm short enough that my legs and arms could just drag, and I'd be back there, And I thought it was the most brilliant thing I'd ever come up with in my life, because my husband wanted to go 500 miles every day. And so I got bored, and so I just would smoke pot, drink, pass out, come to, where are we, Thought I was brilliant, Can't even believe I did that. again, I didn't see a thing wrong with it. What's wrong with it? So about that time, my husband had multiple girlfriends, and this girlfriend, I was going to take care of her. So I hunted her down, and tried to kill her with a Kirby vacuum. So I took a Kirby and I hospitalized her. I broke her nose, I broke her cheekbone, and they had to pull me off it. So I always say, you don't have to carry a gun, just carry a Kirby, So I walked in the house and it was the first scene I seen, and I'm like, I just half beat her to death. And I wouldn't have stopped. And I felt wonderful about it. There was not I'm like, I'll show you, bitch. You ain't woman enough to take my man. That was always my saying. Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, well. So, anyway, moving on, I didn't work. My job, I was a shoplifter, and a really good one. And so I dragged these 4 little kids into the stores with me. I had this huge purse. It was an empty diaper bag. And I just feel anything that was expensive, I put in there. And I did it every day, So if you want steaks, what do you want? Anything that was expensive, I stole. Only got caught stealing a typewriter once. So it wasn't a big deal. And I'll never shop at Kmart again, God damn it. But so I asked my kids when I got sober, I said, did you know that I stole all your clothes and stuff? And they're like, well, other kids got bags. We never got bags or stickers, I'd go in, have them try on the clothes, and then I'd steal the clothes and put them in my little purse, and off we'd go. And I did it every single day. That was my job, because I wasn't going to let anybody watch my kids. They might damage them. They might take care of them. Yeah. So I get sober. 1988 comes along, and the nice thing about being married to another alcoholic is he was always worse than me. He had horrible DTs, horrible DTs, and so I'd get him dressed and dress him up. You got to go to work. Get out of here. And I'd feed him celery juice, trying to get. Then he'd be sweating and everything, and his brother had got sober, and so I called him and I said, God, he's sweating and he's shaking and what do I do? And he's like, he's going through the DTs. And I'm like, what are DTs? And he explained they were delirium tremors. And I'm like, oh, that's what they are. I don't think, I don't have them, but he does, And so, but he was worse than me. So we toddle on down to the Volunteers of America, on what to do, how do we stop drinking? And this guy, he talked to us and he said, you're going down. You're on an elevator. You're going down. And he said, the choice is up to you today. What do you want to do? You can get off that elevator, or you can keep going. And the bottom is death or jails or institutions, Or he said, or you can go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if we want to do that. But I wanted to get him sober. So I'll go with you for 30 days, and then when you're better, then I can go back to drinking. So I remember him pouring out all the booze, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. And I thought, well, I'll go to meetings with him, and so I would dress up, and I'm sweating and I'm shaking, but I'd be like, I'm with him. That's all I would do, and I never introduced myself. I would just go with him, because I got to get him sober. He's the one that works. I'm the one that shoplifts. I can do that drunk, and so he's got to keep working. That's his job, is to take care of me and to bring in money for me and these 4 kids, and wasn't doing a real good job. And I remember one time they came to repossess the trailer we were living in. And so the kids and me were all outside playing. And cops came up and said they were going to repossess the trailer. And I said, okay, come on, kids, go back in. And he goes, no, you can't go in. I said, no, you can go ahead and take us all. We'll go. So whenever Annie and I were talking about going to jail. I should have went to jail so many times, but I'd be like, oh my God, take me. I want to get away from these kids. Bad checks all over town. Take me. But you're going to have to do something with these kids, because I had, my husband was on the road, and I had these 4 kids, and they'd be like, oh, we'll be back. Had checks all over town with my name on them, back in the old days when you had checks. But, so anyway, he wasn't doing a great job of providing a living that I needed, and so I needed to get this guy sober. So I started going to AA meetings, and then I went over to Al-Anon. And I would tell them stories, and they'd be like, maybe you should go over there, because I would say, my husband drugged me out of the bar. I was drunk, and then he pissed on me and everything. And what do you think about? And they'd be like, maybe you should go over there and just kind of try to stop drinking before you come here. They weren't very nice. And I remember going to one of their meetings one day. I'd get on the freeway, and I'd go 100 miles an hour. I'd floorboard it. And then I'd go into this Al-Anon meeting. One day I'd go to AA, the next day I'd go to Al-Anon, and I went, I'll never forgive that son of a bitch. And I'm just, and this Al-Anon lady says, oh, honey, God's already forgiven him. Who do you think you are? And I'm like, really? Really? I don't think so. So anyway, needless to say, Al-Anon did not work for me. I ended back over in AA. Meanwhile, I'm detoxing. I'm crazy. But I found this new meeting. I would go to a meeting. I'm not going to say that stupid prayer. So I would leave. As soon as you got up to say the prayer, I'd leave. In the beginning, I was afraid you were going to ask me to read, so I'd come in late, because I couldn't say all those big words. I didn't know what anonymous or any of those big words were, and so I would leave early. But I found a meeting at noon. They had just separated off at this non-smoking side, and there was only 8 people there, and most of them, and rarely was there another woman. So I got treated special, like I needed to be, and so I would go into that meeting, and I would listen, and sometimes I would share. And I started hearing things. Oh my God, that's me. And then if he was there, I'd be like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? You did that, And I stayed sober. And the first 30 days, I only stayed sober to make sure he stayed sober. But then I started hearing something. But all I heard was, we get sober, and then our life gets wonderful. You're happy, joyous, and free. You get the house, you get the car, these wonderful kids. I was miserable. I was sober. I was untreated. I would leave that meeting. I would drive home again, do 100. Never got caught. I don't know why. But I would drive home just crazy. I would yell and scream at the kids. My kids would go, don't you need another meeting? And I'd be like, yeah, maybe I should go to another meeting. I was untreated. And, I used to think that was like the most horrible thing that ever happened to me, is that I didn't work steps for 18 months. I just came to meetings, and I could breathe. I could breathe, go home, be crazy, But I have as much fear of going back as an untreated alcoholic as I do of drinking. That woman was nuts, and So at 18 months, my sponsor, her name was Judy. She's since passed. But, she said, I've been watching you, Diane. You know what? You're going to be one of them alcoholics that dies. And I couldn't figure out how she knew that. Because my plan, sober, my plan was, I wanted to commit suicide. I didn't want my kids to know it was suicide, but I wanted my husband to know it was his fault, and he would spend the rest of his life knowing it was his fault. And I thought it was a great plan. I was so depressed and so miserable. You took my solution, you took my life, you took my friends, you took everything away when I quit drinking. And I had no solution. There was nothing worse. I was certifiable. And I remember we had 2 cars, both of them old, a yellow Datsun, we painted bright yellow, and then a white car that puffed out black smoke out the back, and it was the best car. And so I decided that day, okay, this is it. I'm going to go up to the top of the mountain. I'm going to come down. I'm going to accidentally drive off the edge and die, and he'll know it was his fault. So I'm coming down the mountain, going really fast, and all of a sudden I'm like, I should probably leave the better car to him and bring the old car tomorrow. So I went home. And I got up the next day, and it was like, I didn't want to do it that day. So it was like, that one day at a time. But I thought, well, I'll find a new way. I was going to a shrink at the time, and I told him my plan. And he said, you know what happened to one of my patients? They came down the canyon going fast. They went off the edge, and they landed in a tree and sat up there and rocked. And I'm like, that's what would happen to me. That's what would happen to me. So that plan kind of went down by the wayside. Still didn't want to live. But Judy took me aside, and she said, Diane, I've been watching you. You're going to die here. You're one of those real alcoholics. Like there's fake ones. But so she challenged me to sit with her, go through the big book, challenged me to read that 4-step or start writing on that 4-step. I told her I wasn't going to turn my will and my life over to God because I'd been one religion, Nevada, came to Utah, became another religion, got excommunicated, became another religion, got disfellowshipped. So I'd done the God shit. I'm not doing the God stuff, but I'll do that 4-step. I'll do that 4-step. She said, start writing your resentments. Oh. Sorry about that. She goes, start writing a list of people that you have resentments against. Oh, I couldn't wait to go to her house and tell her, oh my God, the parents I had, the husband I had, these rotten little teenage bitches I had. Oh my God, I couldn't wait to tell her all the wrong people had done me, And I started making that column, and I wrote all their character defects down, and I sallied forth over to her house and sat there and read off that, what all these people had done me wrong. And we got to the end. She had me just do that part, and then we did that last column with her. I didn't want to do that part. I just wanted to blame everybody else. I have this gift that I can take whatever situation we have, and I can make it your fault. And I thought it was a real gift, And so I remember, I just remember going over and over, they did this, she made me, they made me do this, they made, and it just went on and on. And she said, Diane, children are victims, and adults are volunteers. And let's see how you volunteered in your life with these people. And we started going down the column, how I had volunteered my life. The first time I got kicked out of the car, the first time I got a black eye, the first time I got guns, knives, you name it, had a 44 pointed to my head, and said he was going to take out the kids and then me. And we got sober. I said, were you really going to do that? And he said, absolutely. That was my plan that night. But it was all his fault. But who stayed? Who stayed? That was the other thing Judy said. We train people how to treat us. The first time something like that happens and you let them get away with it, you're off to the races. Every time I made excuses. Every time I lied. If you've been in an abusive relationship, I've sponsored a lot of women that we come to terms with it. We take ownership of it, and oh, phew. So we stayed married 10 years after we got sober. I found the women in this program. I found sponsorship. Oh my God, I found the women. And we kept our programs kind of separate, but instead of growing together, we grew apart, And at 10 years sober, we got a divorce, and he went back out, and he died of this disease, And it was a sad thing to watch, because he was the father of my children, and he ended up living with each one of the children, went to treatment centers, couldn't get sober, could not get sober, and it absolutely broke my heart. Broke my heart to watch him. It broke my heart to watch this disease in action, And so because of the work and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's no regrets there. I have no resentments. In fact, I talk to him in the house once in a while. I really feel his presence, and I'm like, yeah. So anyway, did the step 4 and 5 back to there, 4 and 5. It was like, if you're afraid of that step, if you're new, it was the most glorious revelation of my life. That first 4 step, it was like coming home, because there was nobody left to blame. It was me. I shared this at the God Camp out with Beverly Hyde. I don't know if there's anybody in here that's old enough to remember Beverly, but she was a little old lady, my size now. I used to be tall. No. And she came up and she poked me in the chest, and she had been watching me, and she goes, "Honey, you can't drink this. You can't smoke this. You can't F this. You can't drug this. You can't steal this." She goes, "Honey, you need to stand still and face the beast, and that beast is you." And it was like that, you have these clarifying moments that are like, whoa, all this time I've been blaming everybody else, and all of a sudden, and the alcohol made it so easy, and I did. I started writing that 4th and 5th step, and it was beautiful, and I still love step work. Uncover, discover, discard. That's what we do continuously. I'm 36 years sober. And I'll tell you a little bit what happened up at the camp out. Because I'm still sick. I still have those moments of selfish, self-centered. So I go up 8 days early so I can get my spot. My spot that I camp in every year. It's on the corner. It's by the river. And I pull in, I got my spot. 3 days later, this bitch pulls in. And the guy on the next camp told her she could park right alongside of me. So she's got a 500-foot trailer with a toy hauler and a truck and a Jeep, and she pulls in my spot. Lucky I'm sober, bitch, And so I don't know this lady, She's one of us, but I don't like her, And so she goes, "Gary told me I could camp in this spot." I said, "This is my spot. I park here every year." Well, Gary said I could park here. She parks in there, So, one of the lines in the big book is that if he failed to enlarge on his spiritual condition, and that's the one thing I've never let up on. I'm always reading, always doing the 3-step, the prayer, the meditation, self-examination, that braid that keeps us. So I did some prayer, I did some meditation, I talked to God. I'm walking down the trail, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous of her. That ugly, ugly jealousy. She's younger, she's cuter, she's got the stuff, she's got the boyfriend, she's got the 4-wheeler, she's got the big trailer, she's got a truck and a Jeep, and I was just like, I'm just plain jealous. That's what it is. That was that root, icky Diane that I don't like. And so I was listening to this book, and he said that they have a spiritual group that gets together. and they've got the J-A-F-O, and they always go, Jethro, Jethro, just another forgiveness opportunity. So every time I'd walk by her, Jethro, 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 you know. And by the end of the 8 days, I was at peace with it, you know. So still get those resentments, you know. God is first in my life. God, I talk to God all day long like he's my best friend, or she, or it. Trying to explain God is like trying to explain the sky. You know, where does it go? Where does it end? You get above the earth, there's still sky. You get above the planet, there's still sky. That's my God. And he lives deep, deep in my heart. And when I was walking through the forest and talking about that, it was just that word came up. You're just jealous. Ooh. And I don't like that. But Jethro, Jethro, just another forgiveness opportunity. And it was great. So when I was 3 years sober, after I'd gone through the book with people, or with my sponsor, you know, and started making those amends, you know, and she told me it was start making those amends and immediately get into step 10, 11, and 12, you know, as I'm making those amends. And I started sponsoring people. And I'm like, I don't know nothing. And she goes, you know how to read. You know how to read. You sit down with a big book. It's a text. You can sit down and go through the steps with people. When you get to step 4, they work it. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And I was so blessed because the first 2 people, her name was Gina. She was 19 years old, and I did that. I spilled more booze than you drank. She stayed sober. She became a Lutheran minister. So does I have that power? Hell no, you know, but I know that God did. God, when you're sponsoring somebody, it's just like the presence is so there. I would say things that shocked me. I'd be like, that was really cool. Where did that come from? It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And then another gal named Susie, she's 32 years sober. Still sober. I keep in contact with her. She's now in Oregon. And it was such a gift because I often wondered if the first 2 I sponsored would have been failures, would I have quit? Because I'm that kind of person. But they were successes, and I took the credit. Back then, I absolutely took the credit. Look what I did. You know, I sat down, I read the book, they got sober. Later, I absolutely knew it was all God. Then I had lots of people that came into my life and left. Sometimes I'll see them later. Sometimes I'll see them down the road, you know. Went on a 12-step call one time, and this lady was, so sick. And we drove her to, we called an ambulance. Ambulance came and got her and took her to Altaview Hospital. And so sick. And I was at a women's conference, and some lady came up and says, you don't know who I am, do you? And I'm, no. And it was her. And she was like 2 years sober. I mean, those blessings that you have. When you sit down with a new person and they have those dead eyes and they have those plans, those good ideas that we have. You know, the book says I must get rid of all my good ideas. And I had to get rid of that idea that I just want to die. I just want to die. Make sure he knows it's his fault. Make sure my kids know it wasn't suicide. I got rid of all those ideas, and I started, with God's help breathe life into women. Oh, God. I've been blessed with so many women. I didn't tell any of them I was speaking tonight. So, yeah, I'm like, nyah, 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 nyah. But, you know, they were up at the camp out, and they came down, and they slept in my motorhome, and we camped, and we had tents all over the place, and we had campfires, and oh, my God, and we said prayers, and we walked in the woods, and, nothing like it in I could have ever imagined. This was not the life I planned. 4 kids, I think 11 grandkids, 5 greats. None of them see me drink, you know. And the last one, my last one is named Diane. Woo! I mean, finally! No. Little Diane. I'm like, oh, let's hope she doesn't act like me. But, so my oldest grandson's 31 years old. I've watched him drinking, drink and use since he's like 13. Dropped out of high school, the whole bit. Horrible, horrible drug problem, alcohol problem. Both grandparents on both sides, raging alcoholics. It's kind of like he has no chance. My daughter had him when she was in high school, and he used to go to AA meetings with me when he was little, and he'd go, "Grandma knows motorcycle riders, Mom," and they'd put him on the motorcycle, and he'd play, and then he'd go home and he'd go, "Let's play AA." And so we'd sit there and have conversation. He'd go, "I have a desire to share," because he'd listen in the meetings. And then one day he goes, "Today I was just really frustrated." And he's like 4, and I'm like, I don't even know what that word means, But he would listen. Well, little did I know. So 13, 14, started major drug use, selling drugs, out of high school, the whole bit. 3 years ago, he knocked on my door. He's homeless. He's barefoot. He's in the snow. "Grandma, can I stay with you?" I said, "No, you can't. No. You've made bad choices. I can't have that in my house." God, and then I went in the house and cried. But no, I won't have that in my home. But 2.5 months ago, he's clean, he's sober, and Al-Anon Grandma has got him living with her, and it's been joyful. Took him to the God camp out with me, and I, at first I think it's, my head goes, this is manipulation. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, and I'm talking to all kinds of sponsors, my Al-Anon sponsor. I'm talking to men, and I call them up, and they're like, "Stay out of his program. You can teach him how to make a sandwich, you can tell him to clean his room, but stay out of his program." It has a wonderful sponsor, did a 5th step up in the mountains, and his eyes are just alive. What a joy, what a blessing. We'll see. I'm still waiting for the shoe to drop, but today, what a blessing. And he said, "Grandma, this is what I've been looking for all my life." So those words, when they come out, you're like, they're coming from their heart. They're not the bullshit he always used to give me, So anyway, I'm so grateful to be sober. I'm addicted to hope now. I hope that you guys just keep coming back. There's such a beautiful life here. You can grow up in alcohol. I grew up. When I got sober, I've been using since I was 12. So I was like a 12-year-old. My daughters, they were teenagers, and they'd be like, "God, Mom," because I was just, and so I would go to the grocery store. I can't pick out these green beans. There's too many choices. I would just be, why can't they have one choice? I can't decide if I want cut green beans or fresh green beans or French green beans. And I'd just sit there, and my kids would be like, "God, Mom, get these green beans." So I got to grow up, even though I was 39, I got to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. You have such a life ahead of you. There is such hope here, such friendship, such love, and I'm just so grateful to be sober. I just wish I could give you a piece of the joy and the love I have for everybody in this program. I'll close here quick. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was given 2 years to live. 2 years ago, I'm in congestive heart failure, and they said I wouldn't make it through the hospital stay. But that's been 7 years, and they said 2 years tops. And the first year I did a lot of dying. Everything everybody would say, my mind would go, "But you don't understand, I'm going to be dead next year." But I just smile, And after the first year, I went, "Well, hell, I guess I'll start living." So I've had 6 years with this cancer, So, I always say I don't tell God how big my problems are. I tell my problems how big my God is. I'm useful. I have purpose. I have grandkids. I have sponsees. I have a life. I'm not ready to go. My attitude is, all we have is today. and fuck cancer. So glad to be here. So grateful to be sober. Thank you.